Introducing the rising star, Brandon Lee. Right hand just dropped it flat. Clean right hand. And that's it. Impressive is the only way I can think of. And I'm even allowing for the fact that he's a young guy and still on the rise. Imagine that's exactly what it was. Another right hand.
That's it.
Another right hand. That's it. Well stopped. Dropped Williams flat on his back.
Come on.
In a weird way, this might be Santia's best bet to weather storms like this, so that he punches himself out a little bit.
Oh, that's a huge right hand, and that is it.
This kid can punch, guys.
Really?
No, this guy could punch.
What is good, Danger Zone Boxing Talk? It is your host, BC Left Hook. And as always, pleased to be here with my co-host, Twine B. Liberty. And today we're going to get into some boxing topics that came out this week. We're also going to preview some of the fights coming up later today. But before we start with that, I want to shout out to my co-host here because he's going to eat some crow. He picked the wrong guy. I, of course, picked the right one, as usual. And what we're talking about is the WBO junior lightweight title fight between the champion, Jamell Herring, and Carl Frampton. We all seen how it played out. I predicted it would be a coming out party for Herring. I thought that he fought beautifully, that he controlled every aspect of the fight. He did everything that I expected. Twine, what did Herring show you that you didn't expect because you did take Frampton in that fight?
To me, I feel like in previous fights, Jamell has never used his height. Like he's always got suckered in the firefights with smaller guys. He's obviously the bigger guy at 130 and even 135 against everybody he goes against, thanks to his intangibles like his height and his reach. So I mean, those are things you can't coach, but he's always been a bigger guy, but he's never necessarily fought like that. This was definitely his coming out party. I haven't seen him with such a spectacular performance throughout his career, which is why I've questioned him for so long. And, they put him in there against the biggest name in his career, and he put on the most spectacular performance of his career, similar to Valdez versus Burchelt recently. So, I mean, I had to rank it up there as one of those kind of similar performances as far as a come-out party or him having his stage claim legacy fight, which I don't think he necessarily had prior to this moment. So this is definitely his legacy fight, and he'll always be remembered for this, retiring Carl Frampton. I thought Frampton had a good chance coming into this just because I knew he could, slug it out on the inside. And, just based on what I've seen from Herring in the past, even in the Okendo fight, I've never necessarily been sold on him. And he put together a spectacular performance. So shout out to Jamell on this fight.
Absolutely agree. Now, as you stated, Carl Frampton did retire in the ring after the fight. I think it's time for him to move on. He was already talking about retirement coming into the fight, and I always have questions about fighters when they seem to have one foot already out the door, although you can't say the same thing about Herring. Herring had spoke about, possible retirement should he, not win the fight, which we all know he did. Now, after the fight, there was some word of a possible unification fight down the road with Oscar Valdez, who is coming off the biggest performance of his career as well. As you stated, he destroyed the former boogeyman of the division, Miguel Burchelt. That's a fight I'm very interested in seeing. Now, there were some comments made by Shakur Stevenson when that information was coming out, and he said, "I smell pussy." Now, I don't know if he was talking to Herring, which would be very unusual because they are stablemates, or if he was talking to Valdez, or if he was talking to both. Do you see Herring taking a fight with Shakur Stevenson, or do you see him more leaning towards an Oscar Valdez? I see him leaning more towards Oscar Valdez. That's an exciting fight. I'd love to see how that played out in contrast to styles. But who do you think he's going to fight And do you ever see him actually fighting a Shakur Stevenson?
I mean, fortunate thing about social media, some guys are more active than others, and Jamell is actually one that's pretty active on social media. So, I mean, he's going to give you the full, the real, and tell you what's what. He let out a couple of comments the other day in one of the groups saying that, you know, even before this Frampton fight, he was considering moving up in weight. You know, if he couldn't get a big fight, you know, he was going to move up to 140 or retire. And so that's the same thing that's coming around right now as far as, you know, the WBO giving Jamell Herring 30 days to commit to the Shakur Stevenson fight, or, you know, they're going to take further actions. Obviously, he wants to fight Oscar Valdez in the unification, but, I mean, the WBO's kind of made its orders saying that they wanted Shakur up next, you know, even prior to this. Kind of a similar thing that's going on with the Alexander Usyk and Anthony Joshua in the heavyweight division, but they've been able to labor it or lengthen that out a whole lot more. As far as Herring and Stevenson situation, I don't know if they're going to be able to push it back for this unification with Valdez. But Herring pretty much said it was either going to be a Valdez fight or he's going to move up to 140 or move up in weight to 135. Sorry about that. So, I mean, that's pretty much what we're looking at from Jamell Herring. This is something I've seen from his own words as far as his recent post in the groups. So, I mean, that's always been the case with him. And Shakur Stevenson has never been a serious option in his eyes as far as who he's going to go with next. So, just coming from this latest post I seen from him, I expect him to vacate and move to 135. And Shakur will be fighting for a vacant 130 belt. And, you know, Valdez will just be waiting on the side for that, I guess.
Okay. Now let's speculate. Should Herring end up signed in a fight with Oscar Valdez, who, again, just put in the performance of his career, in my opinion, versus Burchell, who would you like in that matchup?
Obviously, right now, I'd favor Valdez just because he's been there against the numerous foes, 2-belt division as opposed to 1. And like I said, this was Herring's coming out party. Like, nobody's necessarily seen it in him yet, but he was in against a pretty much, I won't say an oversized Carl Frampton, but he's a small guy for 130. And, you know, Herring has all his intangibles where you could think he could be fighting at 140, 147 as far as his height and length. So, I mean, I definitely would favor Valdez stylistically in that fight, even though he has to go through a lot of fire. In most of his previous bouts, he's had to go through a lot of fire. But, I mean, I think I could withstand him getting into a firefight with Jamell Herring as opposed to someone else in the division.
Did Oscar Valdez's performance against Burchell, has that more leaned you towards him in that fight and that possible matchup? Because I like both fighters. I'm a little more closer to Herring. You know, he is my I follow him on social media. He's one of my Facebook friends. I don't have like a relationship with him, but I appreciate who he is. Being a former veteran myself, I support him in every way possible. But that's a tough fight, man. Especially the way what we've seen out of Valdez in his last fight, again, against a guy that a lot of people were afraid of in that division. If Herring could use his height and his reach in that fight, I would favor him. But the way that Valdez fought in that last fight, I just don't know, man. You know, I could see it going either way. I could also see Valdez, dropping him or KOing him because, he showed a lot of power. But again, I think Herring is a little more defensively sound than a Burchell, who is one of the worst defensive fighters in boxing. It was always a question mark for me coming into his fights. I mentioned it when we previewed that fight. I took Burchell, but I was very it's very possible that Valdez is going to catch him because he gets caught a lot. So that's a matchup I hope happens. I'm very interested in seeing that. As you stated, the WBO did give Jamell Herring a certain time limit to commit to the Shakur Stevenson fight, so that's a fight I'm also interested in. Now, this is real quick. Do you think that Stevenson was out of pocket for his comments? Because that's pretty strong words there. I smell pussy. You know,
I mean,
that's not something that you say to a friend.
We don't know who it was referring to, but we do know Oscar didn't want any piece of him at 126. And I mean, both of them seem to be shying away from him at 130, even though Oscar said he'll take the fight. I mean, they want to go after other options as opposed to Shakur as a priority, which is understandable. You know, Shakur doesn't necessarily bring anything to the table at 130 at the moment. He's not even an interim titleist. So, I mean, they would be better off going off in a unification bout against each other. I think that's a fight that's big for both. But, I mean, I just don't see it happening with the politics. You know, Shakur's had to sit out long enough. You know, being a WBO ex-champ, that puts you first in line when you move up and activate that mandatory. And, you know, he's been waiting for a while. He let this Frampton fight go through. So I don't think the WBO is going to stiff him once again, even though they've done it for the likes of like Anthony Joshua and, you know, his situation as far as not Usyk getting a title fight yet. Coming up from cruiserweight as a titleist. So, but I don't think his comments are out of line, especially in pertaining to Valdez. As far as Herring, if he doesn't accept this fight within the 30 days, then it'll have to apply to him too, which is, you know, one of those weird things because they're stable mates. You know, they fight out of the same camp essentially. Shakur is still headed by his regular people, but he puts in a lot of work with TC's camp and Bomac. So, yeah, I mean, that's the only way I could see it out of line is if it was in reference to Herring, which I don't think it is. But, I mean, as far as what you said previously, this fight with Herring was his most defining of his career. Like, he's never necessarily looked the part for me, and this is the first time he looked that part for me against Frampton in this fight, you know, especially winning by knockout, which isn't necessarily his forte. You know, he fought an excellent fight inside and out. And, you know, it was a performance of a lifetime. Hopefully we can see him in another big-time bout against Valdez. I would prefer to see that over him and Stevenson at this point. But, you know, with the way the politics work out in boxing, you know, Herring his hand is gonna be forced, and I think he'll ultimately end up dropping the belt and moving up to 140, if not retiring.
Okay, speaking of Bud Crawford, after the fight, Herring did give T-Bud a lot of credit for his
sorry about
style.
that. I said 140. I meant 135 for Herring.
Oh, no problem. All right. So earlier last week, there was some huge news surrounding Bud Crawford. There was a lot of rumors being spread that there was a planned fight, I believe June 5th, versus one Manny Pacquiao. Nothing official has came out as of yet. Bob Arum has promised everybody when the announcement drops, it's going to be a big name. But again, no opponent has been set. Does that put in doubt for you the possibility of the Manny Pacquiao fight?
Definitely, with the amount of training in between fights, are, you know, you want to get at least a good 8 to 10 week camp in. They're looming for June 5th. The announcement was supposed to come last weekend in the card in Dubai with Herring and Frampton. There's still no word. So, I mean, it's looking less and less likely for me. I'm probably leaning more towards Sean Porter getting the nod, even though he has COVID, but I'm not even sure what to think about that, you know, right now, what his COVID situation is like or how he's recovered and if he'll be able to get a full camp in time. So, I mean, this feels like another one of those moments where Bob is jerking our chain, and it's not going to be the biggest fight as it was announced, you know, as far as him saying on Bob Sharp Conversations that they had a big opponent name coming up, and, you know, it hasn't been announced yet, especially for it to be a June bout. You know, we're coming up on small promotion time, you know, pay-per-view promotion, and, you know, giving the fighters adequate training period. We're coming up on that time already, if not surpassing it. So this is another drop in the ball for Bob and Bud for me as far as their aspirations for a big bout.
Agreed. And do you think it's a possibility that Aaron threw that out there to try to steal some of the shine from Teofimo Lopez's first pay-per-view with no real intention of signing the Manny Pacquiao fight? Because let's be honest, he told Teofimo he didn't have, I believe, the $25 million to pay him. I would have to believe that if Manny Pacquiao was going to take this fight, he's gonna take at least $25 million or more, or ask for at least that. And if you didn't have the money to pay Teofimo, how are you going to come up with the money to pay a much larger sum for a legend such as Manny Pacquiao? Do you think that was just smoke and mirrors, trying to steal some of the shine, sort of a way to pay back Teofimo for some of the things he said lately in the media?
I mean, it's definitely possible. I mean, at the same time, what have we seen from Triller as far as promoting his upcoming pay-per-view? You know, I'm not sure the date. I know it's coming up, in May?
June 5th. I think really.
Okay.
Yeah, so, I think really right now Thriller is. I don't mean, because I think right now though their marketing is more geared towards the April 18th fight with Jake Paul and Ben Askren right now, because I've seen a lot of promos for that.
I haven't seen much from them on that either, but I mean that could be me just not paying attention. But I could definitely see it plausible that, you know, Bob Hupp was just trying to take some steam off of that pay-per-view, which I'm not necessarily thinking is gonna flourish that well anyway. But we'll know once time marketing comes into play. We haven't seen it yet because, you know, they have other events coming up as far as Triller. So I mean, it's definitely possible with Bob. You know, he knows all the tricks in the rule book. You know, he actually created the rule book partially, you know, as long as he's been in the game. So I mean, it's plausible, but at the same time, I can't say he's necessarily sabotaged Teo's upcoming pay-per-view against Kambosos yet. Kambosos has done a good job of hyping it up in the media recently. So I mean, I can't put the blame on Bob yet. You know, these guys are going to hype this fight up one way or another, and it doesn't necessarily take Bob dropping this kind of comment to detract from that. I think it probably looks worse for Bud, if anybody, just because we were told we were going to get this bombshell announcement, and nothing's come to fruition yet. So, I mean, it's a worse look on Bob and Bud, if anybody, and I don't think it necessarily plays into Teofimo right now, because Triller still has some time to promote that bout in June.
All right, let's move on to our next topic. I believe it was earlier last week, the promoter of Tim Tszyu, the son of legendary Costa Tszyu, said he was ready to drop $10 million for the title fight in Australia. My question is this a little too early for the youngster?
In my opinion, I think he needs probably a good 3 to 4 fights to get in the upper echelon of 154. I mean, putting him in there against the Dennis Hogans and what's that cat's name that lost to Pacquiao, Jeff Horn, that doesn't necessarily do it for me. I don't think highly of those guys. I know there's been an interesting bout put into play as far as Tszyu and another local Australian that does Michael Zarafa. I'd like to see that to gauge where he's at, you know, to see if he blows through him or not. That would give me a good indicator of if he's ready to be in a title shot or not. But, you know, him, as far as him being the number one guy in position to fight a Castano right now, or for him fighting Jamell Charlo, I definitely don't think he's ready for those fights based on his competition so far, and it's all been local, based out of Australia, for the most part. So I wouldn't put him in there in the higher echelon on 154, saying he deserves a title shot, and for them to put $10 million out there for the fight, you know, shit, it's a cash out for whoever's the champion at 154 right now. But I mean, I don't know if they want to put that pressure on Tim yet. I don't think he's ready for it. It had to be another 3 or 4 fights for me to be convinced, and it had to be against non-local competition in Australia, honestly. Zarafa fight, though, I'm interested in, just because he gives up a good performance against anybody.
I agree with you 100%. Before I would like to see him versus one of the champions in that division. I would like to see him, versus a J-Rock or one of the other contenders in that division. He has destroyed his opposition. But again, who are we to say? Because as we've seen with a lot of prospects lately, we have went on record, so I think it's too early, such as a Teofimo Lopez, even though I did pick him to win the fight and he didn't. I just want to throw that out there. And it wasn't too early for him. It was the right time. So until you throw him in there, you really don't know. Personally, I'd like to see him again versus someone such as a J-Rock to gauge him where is he at. Because as you stated, we haven't really seen him against anybody outside of Australia. I don't know, how that came about. Have they not been able to get anybody to come over there or sign a possible fight with a better opposition here in the United States? But again, we don't know until it happens. So hopefully, we'll see how that goes for him. Moving on, we're going to talk about the IBF title eliminator that is in talks between Micharl Hunter and Filip Hrgovic. That's an excellent matchup. I think Micharl Hunter is one of the most skilled fighters in the division. I still have questions of whether or not fighting at heavyweight is best for him, or should he have stuck to cruiserweight. He hasn't had some bad showings, but the fact that he got a draw with the guy that Dillian Whyte just destroyed, even though Povetkin had knocked Whyte out in the first fight. That first fight was going the way of the second fight until he caught him with that brutal uppercut. Speaking of uppercut, man, is this not the year of the uppercut going back to the end of 2020? How many fights have we seen either end on uppercuts or the beginning of the end with uppercuts? This is Jamell Herring. I believe he caught Frampton with a brutal one that dropped him at one point. But what do you think of this proposed eliminator between Hunter and Hrgovic? And who would you like in that fight?
Right now it's a pretty it's a crazy fight for me, man, because I feel like Hunter's a little bit on and off. I mean, as far as consistency, there's someone we talked to actually in one of my other groups, actually a legend in MMA, Muhammad Lawal, real close with Micharl Hunter, and we have a lot of conversations about Micharl Hunter, and he just says this guy gets in his own way a lot. That's one of the things that he puts out there. So I mean, I feel like Hunter's kind of like a mental case, but he's definitely one of the most skilled. To me, I still feel like he gave Alexander Usyk his toughest matchup to this day, and that was coming off of almost a 2-year layoff, out of shape in the wrong weight class, So I still think he's a very talented fighter. I think he has enough tools in the toolbox to get past Filip, who's he's one of the bigger guys at heavyweight, and he uses a lot more power. But again, he's another one of the Eastern Euros that they hyped up to be this next thing at heavyweight. And he definitely has all the potential from what I've seen, but he's had a lot of hit and miss performances early in his career to where I'd be like for Hunter right now in their stages of their career, especially a focused Hunter. And I don't want to use that excuse like we use for Adrian Broner, but I mean, a Hunter that's in there 100%, like I think he schools Filip. But it's definitely a good bout for an eliminator, and I'm not mad at it. I won't say it's early in Filip's career, but, he's needed a step-up fight, and this is the first person that's actually been willing to step to the plate. So, I mean, I commend Micharl Hunter as well, and, I mean, I'm just happy about this potential bout.
I agree with you. I would favor Hunter too, and just for speculation, winning that IBF eliminator would put him in line to fight an Anthony Joshua. Me personally, I just don't see Hunter beating Anthony Joshua. I could be wrong. I just don't think he's the type of fighter that would give Joshua issues should he win this eliminator and become the number one contender and get that fight. What would you think of that potential matchup?
What was the matchup again?
Hunter versus, because if he wins the IBF, he would put him in line to fight for Anthony Joshua's IBF strap.
I mean, I definitely think he gives Joshua troubles. I mean, like, he has the intangibles of those guys as far as his height. He's probably more athletic. He just doesn't necessarily have the strength or one-punch knockout power those guys do. But I mean, you look at him like an old school, one of the older fighters in heavyweight, like a Chris Bird, that can make it, very confusing for anybody, with his agility, and he has more size than the Chris Bird, at that in heavyweight class. So I definitely think he makes it an interesting fight because he's more mobile, and he has those other intangibles such as his height and his reach. So I mean, I think he makes any fight tricky for any heavyweight. And I wouldn't assume anything less against Anthony Joshua. I definitely think it's a tough matchup for him. I probably favor Joshua going in, but I wouldn't be surprised by him being able to outbox Joshua and stifle him, the same way.
All right. Well, let's move forward to a fight that I believe was postponed at one point, and that's going to be the vacant WBO light heavyweight title fight between Joe Smith Jr. and Maxim Vlasov. Excellent fight, in my opinion. Joe Smith earlier the week said that he knew that this is going to be one of his toughest fights. Joe Smith Jr. never disappoints. He always puts on a solid performance. He's a guy I think that the quote unquote casuals and will enjoy watching. I think this is a fight that the casuals as well as the hardcore fans are going to enjoy. I think it's going to be a slugfest. I favor Joe Smith Jr., but what do you think of the matchup?
I'll favor Joe Smith going in, but I mean, Maxim has a lot of experience, and he's a guy that has fought as high as cruiserweight. So I mean, I don't know what that size means for him coming down fighting against Joe Smith. But I mean, I wonder if I don't know if that takes away from his power or not. He's beat some good guys like Isaac Chilemba. He's been in there against Glowacki and a lot of the good cruiserweights. So I mean, I'm not quite sure what him going down to light heavyweight brings down, or if it affects his power or not, or if it helps him. But I definitely think he has some intangibles that you can't not rule out of favor. He has the height advantage and the reach advantage over Joe Smith. Well, actually, the height advantage. Joe Smith has a pretty long reach. But I'm favoring Joe Smith right now. He's a very strong puncher for the weight class at 175, having 21 knockouts. And hard work Joe. He brings his lunch bucket and his construction hat to the job, man, and you can't knock him for that. He comes to put in work. He's one of my favorite fighters to watch as far as that, because he's going to give you his all in the ring. So I'm going to favor him over Vlasov. Probably a later stoppage. I think a later stoppage for him in this fight.
Yeah, that's what I'm picking as well. I got Joe Smith Jr. by TKO somewhere around the 9th or 10th round. I think it's going to be an exciting fight for everybody who does tune in, and I hope everybody supports that fight. All right, let's move on to a fight I'm very interested in, and that is between Jerwin Ancajas and Jonathan Javier Rodriguez for the IBF Junior Bantamweight title. I heavily favor Ancajas in this fight. I think he's one of the more slept-on fighters in the world. I don't think he gets the due that he's often deserves. I don't see Rodriguez giving him too many problems. I think Ancajas is going to win this fight. I'm gonna say it goes the distance, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's a stoppage victory either.
I'm going to agree with you on this one. Ancajas is probably one of the guys slept on in that division as far as at super flyweight. He's been a long reigning title holder, fighting out of Pacquiao stable. He's had some recent promotional issues as far as leaving Top Rank and moving over to the PBC banner. So, that's why we haven't necessarily seen him as active. But I mean, he's always been a strong fighter, and I definitely have him overwhelming Jonathan Rodriguez in this fight, who's fought mainly out of competition out of Mexico, and nobody with this kind of name yet. So, I mean, I'll definitely favor Ancajas, and I won't say later stoppage. I think it will go to distance, but it'll definitely be a UD for Ancajas.
I agree. And before we move on to our next topics, I want to make a quick announcement. The Final Bell podcast is teamed up with Total Life Changes. It's a health brand. As you can see, there's a link in the bar going underneath. You can help support the show and begin living a more healthy lifestyle. Just check out the products. They offer products such as NRG. It's a all-natural energy vitamin. They also sell some detox tea to help people lose weight. If you feel like helping support the show, you just check out the link, go to the store. They've set me up with my own store. And shout out to TLC for the support. All right, moving on to our last topic. This is one I've been waiting for, and that is one of my favorite prospects, Jaron Boots Ennis, taking on the best competition on his resume to date, and that is former champion Sergey Lipinets. Extremely hyped for this fight. I'm ready to see if Boots is what I believe and what most people believe him to be, and I think this is going to be an excellent barometer. I've actually seen and heard a lot of people I respect saying Ennis is going to lose his fight to Lipinets. And that definitely, we all know his chin is going to be tested at some point in this fight. Lipinets can bang. I, however, believe that Ennis is one of the guys that is the future of boxing. I'm taking him to win this fight. I'm taking him to win this fight by stoppage at some point. I don't see this fight going the distance due to both of their styles. But I'm going to kick it over to you. I know you're high on Boots as well. Who are you taking in the fight, man?
I mean, honestly, I expect this to be one of those showcases for Ennis. We've been waiting for this for a while. We were supposed to get it against what was his last fight, Van Heerden? I believe the one that got stopped.
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, we were expecting it with Van Heerden. We didn't get it with Van Heerden, but I'm expecting it to be the showcase for Jerwin Ancajas. This is going to be a showcase belt right here. He has all the intangibles for a 147 fighter. Like he's big at the weight, 5'10", long wingspan. And, you got Lipinets, who's pretty much was a 140 fighter for the most part of his career prior to now. So, I mean, I definitely think Boots has all the intangibles and the skill set to overwhelm Lipinets in this fight. The athleticism, the speed, the power. This is going to be a showcase fight for Ennis. So I'm not necessarily going to gain as much from other people that are looking to gauge this fight, just because I didn't think highly of Lipinets at 147, even though he has the win over aging Lamont Peterson. But you look at his last matchup, he was able to get outboxed, and Ennis can do that better and more effectively than Lipinets were his most recent opponent, and he could also bang inside and has the power. So I'm expecting Ennis to put on a world-class performance, and I'm looking at it like it's going to be Floyd's performance against a Corrales, or one of those kind of Floyd against Arturo Gatti type of performances. Like he's going to put on the show.
I agree. As I stated, I expect him at some point to stop Lipinets. I think Lipinets' style is perfect for Ennis, but again, Lipinets is going to test his chin in ways it's not been tested. I think this is a much better fight when it comes to setting up Ennis for the future than a Van Heerden ever would have been. Again, Lipinets is a former world champion. He's highly respected still in a lot of circles in boxing. I know that you said you're not as high on him, and you never were, but there were I've heard a lot of guys I respect stating that this is a very dangerous fight for Ennis. I believe, again, Ennis is going to, as you do, put on a showcase performance. And after this fight, None of the champions or contenders are going to be able to duck Ennis. Ennis is going to be, again, in my opinion, he's one of the guys that is the future of boxing. Highly excited for this fight, ready to see it. Well, Twine, that's our show for today. Is there anything else you want to say to the people before we roll out?
I just want to say thanks everybody for tuning in. We got a big weekend of fights. We didn't even go through all of them. We got Conor Benn fighting in his toughest opponent against Samuel Vargas this afternoon. That's going to be a highly contested bout. We got the nemesis of Clarissa Shields at middleweight and Savannah Marshall fighting to defend her belt today. So just pay attention to boxing. It's a huge day of fights out there, and you should be entertained by everything that comes on. Even a prospect at 147 that's going against Thomas DeLorme. That's a fight you need to pay attention to because this is a guy that, is supposed to be wrecking Storm at 147. So, just pay attention to your boxing feeds today. Watch all that you can because this is a huge weekend of boxing, and we're still early in the year.
Facts. And real quick, I see the homie Xavier. I don't want to say it wrong. They're with the Supreme Boxing, and I think they do the Boxing Rundown podcast. One of my favorite people to listen to right here. He's iterated that Ennis can not be ignored anymore. 100% Xavier, man. Shout out to you guys for what you do. You guys inspire me to be a better podcaster as well. Hope you all have a blessed weekend. That's the show, and we out. Y'all have a great weekend. Make sure to turn into the fights. They're going to be exciting this week.